right, good morning, everybody. Glad you guys could join us today. I'm just going to give a quick intro, and then I'm going to sit down and let the professionals talk. But we're really excited today to have Josh, Randy, and Franco from Everence Foundation with us today. They're going to talk about financial stewardship and general good principles for, biblical living when it comes to finances. I'll let them explain it better than that. But we're just really thankful to have them. They'll give a much better spiel about who they are and what they do than I will, but we're glad they're here. Just general things. I know you kind of know all this, but coffee in the back, food in the back, grab that at any time. The bathrooms are right down the hallway. There's like a little thing that says restrooms. You open it, and the hallway that splits into men's and women's bathrooms there. So do that. If your kids are here and you're wondering where they went, they're just upstairs in the nursery, one floor up. Other than that, I think that's it for kind of general announcements. These guys will be here for a couple hours. We'll be with them. They're going to give us a few breaks, so don't think like we're just going to get fire hosed for 3 hours. We'll have a couple breaks here and there to stretch and digest our food and our brains. Just welcome these guys, and let's, be good listeners to what they have for us.
All right, we'll see if you clap at the end, right? That's the big question. So it's great to be with you. Always glad to come out and share. This is a unique time. Oftentimes we get times that we get 45 minutes or an hour or something like that. So being together for till 4 o'clock today, that's what we're... You weren't counting on that? No, we'll have a couple good hours of content, good time together. We're a small enough group, and the things that I've brought for you today are really a little bit of a hodgepodge of different things, just so that we can kind of take a high-level view of a lot of things, and we're doing that intentionally, so that we can tap into some stuff, maybe raise some questions. I'm very happy at the end of this if you're leaving with more questions than you came in with, because there's so many times when we're talking about our financial lives, it's really a question of, I don't know what I don't know. And so it's discovering some of those things. There's probably some of you in here who are in the financial world and you're like, I know all that stuff. If you know all this stuff, please help me. I want to hear your voices. We want to have some time to talk together. I don't want to be just throwing stuff at you for a couple hours. I want to have some space for dialogue. So we'll try to create that space too. So I'm going to take some pauses throughout the morning to say, okay, what did you hear? What questions came out of that? And let's have some conversation around that. So that's the framework of what I'm thinking of for the morning and what we want to be working at. But before we get into that, you look at these guys that are coming in you've never met before, and you're kind of like, okay, why are these guys here and what are they trying to sell me? That's the natural radar that goes up, and I get that, and I affirm that. I tell my son, who is now a junior in college, I've told him through the years, if it's free, then guess what? You're the product. You're the one that's being the commodity that's being valued here. So why are we here and what are we doing? My name's Randy Nice. I serve as managing director of our Eastern Pennsylvania Everence office, and we're located in Souderton. We have a team of 16 people, including Franco and Josh, who I'll let introduce themselves in just a moment. But Everence is a faith-based, member-owned, nonprofit financial services company. So 4 kind of key distinctives of who we are. We're faith-based. We come out of a church tradition. We used to be known as Mennonite Mutual Aid. For those Bible fellowshippers who know their Bible fellowship history, you know that Mennonites and Bible fellowshippers were together for a long time. And Bible fellowship went one branch out, and Mennonites were kind of the traditional group. So we serve anybody who has their roots in what's called that Mennonite or Anabaptist tradition. But we serve now, we've grown. About 12 years ago, we changed our name to Everence because we had a lot of folks say, Mennonite Mutual Aid? What in the world is Mennonite Mutual Aid? And I'm not Mennonite, so it must not be for me. So Everence has more signaled our kind of opening our arms a little bit more widely to say we serve anybody who wants to integrate faith and finance. And we serve about 30 denominations directly, including the Bible Fellowship. So we work with church extension ministries, helping them with their fundraising and their endowment management. And we had a great time in Lancaster. When was it, in the fall? Losing track. We actually have one of the things that we work on is pastor financial wellness, because what we know is that pastors are leaving the ministry because of financial pressures. So we actually had a retreat. We took pastors and their wives to come with us all together, Bible Fellowship pastors, to come and spend a night in Lancaster. We did some input kind of stuff. It was sort of like, pastor timeshare kind of thing. They came and got a little bit of perks, and then they had to sit and listen to us for a little bit. But we didn't do a hard sell at the end or anything. You didn't have to try to sign the timeshare contract. But so yeah, we went to we did the Lancaster tour of Shady Maple and then Sight and Sound. So along with some lessons and an overnight the hotel out there. So that's one of the ways we bless pastors too. So that was only my first one. We're faith-based. We're member-owned and nonprofit. We kind of put those two together. We're a special kind of nonprofit. For those of you who work with charities, with nonprofits in the community, the numbers 501c3. You've heard that. We're actually a 501c8, which means we're just down the road, down the tax code from those 501c3s. We're a nonprofit. We're tax exempt, but we're a special kind of tax exempt organization where we actually have to figure out what our tax bill is as an organization, and then we are mandated then not to just put those tax savings in our pocket that we'd have to say, but we're mandated to give those would-be tax dollars back to our members. And you're our members because you're part of the church. You're part of the churches that we work with. So that's how we actually are here. And it's one of the great things, the wonderful things I love about working with Everence is we really are thinking first and foremost of what's best for you, not how do we get you into a product. How do we get you in this new car today? We're just thinking of what's your journey, the journey that you're on, and how can we help you achieve the goals and what God has called you to. A definition of stewardship that I've heard that I love is how do we order our lives in a way that we can say yes when God calls to us? How do we order our lives in a way that we can say yes when God calls to us? And that's really what we're trying to help our congregations and the members in them work at. How many people do you know that say, I wish I could do this, but I can't because I'm buried in debt? God's called me to this, and I can't do it. Maybe in a couple years we can get to that place. But so we're about helping to fulfill the call that God's put in your life. Faith-based, member-owned, nonprofit financial services. We're a comprehensive financial services company. And we work with investment management. We work with charitable giving. We work with some insurances. We have, in our Souderton office, we have 3 folks who are senior health specialists. So they work helping seniors navigate that change into Medicare. Which is kind of crazy. It's a crazy process. So on the surface you say, what's that have to do with faith and finance? But it's a huge stewardship issue as we think about how are we navigating and stewarding our health and the finances we're spending on that. So that's a little about who we are. My story myself, I am trained as a teacher. I taught history and Bible for a number of years in Philadelphia, a place called Philadelphia Mennonite High School, and taught on the Hopi Reservation in northern Arizona for a number of years. And I was such a good teacher that they kept bumping me into administration. So it got to a point where I said, do I want to be a principal or is it time for me to move out? And I said, I think it's time for me to move out. So I moved into nonprofit administration. I ran a small historic site in Philadelphia for a number of years. And was really praying and saying, God, what's next for me? I have no idea. It doesn't feel like this is the spot that you're calling me to or you have for me ultimately. but was like, I have no idea what skills are being built. Well, my educational background, my nonprofit management, and then in my own congregation in Philadelphia, we were working, I was part of a financial ministry team. So all three of those kind of came together, and my role that I started with Everence with called Stewardship Consultant, where we went and really our charge is to help pastors, help congregations, and help nonprofits in their financial ministry and in the work they're doing in congregations. So found a home at Everence, and I've been here for 16 years. So 2007, is that 16 now? It changes every year, so I can't remember sometimes. That's like my anniversary, but I get in trouble with that one, though. Franco has a knowing nod. Yes, he gets in trouble there, too. So I moved into the role of managing director, kind of running our Souderton office, and brought our friend Franco along as our new stewardship consultant. So he's Randy 2.0, the new improved version. But I'll have Franco come up and share just a little bit about himself. And then Josh Gummo, some of you may know as well as a member of our team. Josh is a financial planner, certified financial planner, and he's a Bible fellowshipper too. So, and his roots are deep around here, but I won't steal your thunder. I'll let Josh introduce himself. So we'll give these guys just a minute to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into some of what we're doing this morning.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Franco. I've been a pastor. That's what I was trained in and still am. So I was a pastor for over 20 years and a missionary. So my family and I just came back. We've just relocated back to this area from the Dominican Republic in this past year. And when we came back, we were trying to figure out, hey, what's God going to do with us? And this came along. And so one of the things that happened for me is that being a pastor, you get a chance to work really closely with a group of people, seeing their spiritual lives grow and watching that happen. Being a missionary, you get to look at the bigger world, and you get to say, hey, what's God doing in the world, and how do we see the gospel move forward here in this space? And so coming back home, we were like, what? Where are we going to fit? Where are we going to be? And the awesome thing about Everence and this role as stewardship consultant that I'm in is that I get to do both of those things now. I get to walk alongside pastors and church advocates, we call it, and watch what's happening in the local church, while also still getting to keep a bigger picture on like all the churches and what they're all doing collectively, but also what we do as an organization through community develop initiatives and other things like that, both in the United States and around the world. And so for me, it's just a really great marriage of walking alongside what God's doing both in the local church and the world. And so very excited to be a part of that, to participate in that, and get to meet you guys, and hopefully continue to walk alongside you guys as you continue to grow. As you graduate, hopefully, coming soon, it'll be kind of fun to watch that birth happen, and hopefully walk alongside you guys and help in any way we can as an organization and my role as stewardship consultant. Thank you.
So I gotta say, I'm excited to be here. As Randy mentioned, not only did I grow up in the BFC, so I love seeing the BFC grow, and the fact that I heard Dan was planning a church here in Topton. I grew up going to Brandywine, and I'd rather the high school not be known for drugs, but for, good Christian growth happening. So what you're all doing here, planning this church, you're a light to this area here. So stay strong, reach out, impact the community first and foremost. So I grew up the top of the hill, Fleetwood Address, but I went to Brandywine, so I was a confused kid growing up. But
That's what did it? That's what confused me.
partly. I grew up with 3 sisters as well, so I don't forget the anniversary. My wife grew up with like 16 brothers, so she tends to. So I'm in the clear there. But she was raised by missionaries in Morocco, so she's a huge blessing in my life from that aspect. I grew up with a dad who instilled good principles in me as far as savings, and so I've always had a passion for finances. The Lord directed me on this route at Liberty. I had a professor who helped me get on the CFP track, Certified Financial Planner track in college, and I love this because I have a passion for it, but we're not taught this stuff in school. And so I do say kudos to all of you who've come out today. Probably thought, well, there's different things I could be doing on a Saturday morning that are a little bit more exciting than budgeting and money management.
What are you talking about?
What am I talking about? What I'm talking about is where my passion comes from. We're called to be good stewards, and every dollar you're given, regardless if you have the biggest budget in the room or the smallest, Christ doesn't care how big your budget is. He cares where your heart's at and what you're doing with every dollar. If you can't manage a small amount, we know in heaven we're not going to be in charge of anything. And so where is your foundation with everything? If it's not solid, well, then you can't grow from there. And when you get this right, well, when the church wants to grow and put an addition, you're going to be the first one in line. I want to put $1,000 down to help grow that. So going through this is going to be huge for you. The last thing I want to share is I started my career in one of the big name firms. It was great. They got me licensed and everything, but you don't see the managing director of those firms coming to a budgeting meeting. It's a very different environment being in a for-profit firm versus how we're structured here. I don't have a list of products that I have to have so many people sign up for today. Franco said the word, I think you said the word in your presentation. We're here to help. We want to further God's kingdom, and we do that by getting you guys freed up with your budgets so that you can be a light for this world. So that's why I love working with Everence. But I'll be around for more questions, but thanks for all you guys coming out.
Okay, that's enough about Everence now. We told you why we're here and who we are. I like to lead with that because, hey, like I said, it's good to know like what's the motivation of these folks here. Are they and what should I be kind of keeping my radar up for? So hopefully that gives you a good foundation to know we're here to really think about helping you hear the voice of God, helping you listen to where God is calling you, and helping you say yes when God's called. That's what we would love to be able to help you with. All right, I'm gonna be helpful for me just to do a quick whip around. We got like 25 of us or so. So I don't want this to be like a half hour kind of thing. So what I want you to tell me is two things, right? Okay, these are your two things. And for the introverts among you who are like, oh no, I'm gonna have to speak out, you can always just go, I'm good, pass. But for those who like a minute to think about this, when we do introductions, oftentimes, we find that it's like, okay, I wasn't paying attention to what anybody else was saying because I was thinking about what I was going to say. So I'm going to give you a second to think about what's your answer first. Okay, ready? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about this one thing. You're going to say your name, which I think you probably already got. You're probably pretty good with that. Give me your name and tell me one thing that you hope you hear today. Why did you come? What brought you here that you said, hey, here's the one thing about finances that I hope we talk about today? I can't guarantee we'll get there, but it helps me kind of say, here's the one thing maybe that you would hope you're leaving with today. So take 30 seconds to think about that, and we'll start that. All right, we know pastors always get to start, so we'll start with pastor.
Dan Huster, hoping to continue to think about how to, basically general savings,
Uh-huh.
not just put in the saving account, but how to invest and save well.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Heidi Huster, I think saving for the future, like retirement and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What should I be doing now? Since it's not yet, but I can't wait till then.
Yeah, great, thanks.
I'm Andrew. I got tricked into this, but hopefully.
I was told there'd be pizza, right, or something. I don't know.
I was told pastries. There was. But, hopefully, me and the wife learned something.
Okay. How were you tricked? I'm interested now. How do you?
They said there was pastry.
Oh, okay.
I'm Ashley, and I think just general savings and investing.
Okay. Sure.
Joyce,
savings, not letting everything nickel and dime you.
Yeah, yeah. Good. Thanks.
Carl, more retirement savings.
Okay.
Larry Davies, looking for various principles of budgeting.
Okay. Thanks.
Michelle Davies,
Mm-hmm.
budgeting, retirement.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And Afro, thinking I should have done this one.
Yep.
Jean Moyer, and I come from a financial background.
Oh, great.
And also with a faith-based company, so I was anxious to learn about Everence,
Okay, great. What company were you with?
private financial.
Okay, Thrivent, yeah. So Thrivent and Everence are kind of like the cousins. We're kind of the same. We're organized in the same way. So Thrivent is for Lutherans, and well, Thrivent. Yeah, same way. Thrivent was for Everence was for Mennonites. Thrivent was for Lutherans, and we've both kind of gone. Our arms are open much wider than that now. So, yeah. Thank you.
Aaron Rohrbach, I was gonna say what Andrew up there said, but he took mine. I guess, other than he brought me, he drug me here. But just the budgeting.
Okay.
And, retirement and better steward.
Uh-huh.
Sean Rohrbach, and probably just to be a better student.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thanks.
Controller,
Uh-huh.
and I would be hearing more of the biblical principles of evaluation.
Okay. Thanks.
Joe Pasolka, I guess daily and weekly discipline
Mm-hmm.
are sweet spot, so we get all kinds of parts from there.
Okay. Thanks.
Mike, savings.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I make, and sipping whatever.
Yeah. 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 I can make a mean budget. Actually, living it out is a rough one sometimes, right? So, let's swing over here.
Dan Fasanella, strategies for debt reduction.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Tim Trock, budgeting and reorienting my financial priorities.
Okay.
I'm Joan Chalk, just like smart investing.
Uh-huh.
Carol Cook, budgeting and biblical principles of budgeting.
Okay.
My name's Gary Cock. I'm invisible for 2 reasons.
Okay. That's good. We'll let you have two.
My first one is just because of my background, having worked in banking for 37 years.
Oh, great.
I find myself having people ask me, how do I do this? How do I manage my money and all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
at which I'm not especially qualified to do. So maybe the best thing I do is just get a supply of business cards.
Yep.
And then the second part of it is, I'm at that point in time where now you're withdrawing monies from 401ks and so forth. And what are some of the better planning concepts of that, those withdrawals, and what do you need to consider as you head into that part of the
Yep.
financial life?
Yeah. All right. Great ones.
I do have 401k question if that comes up.
Yeah. We're going to toss those to Josh because that's his world. So. Great. Well, it's great to hear kind of the varied places we're at. It's nice to have some folks with the financial experience in the world too. So feel free. Feel free to kind of say, hey, here's how I saw this happen in my career or what I've seen, because we learn from each other the best ways that we can, better than sometimes just listening to or looking at worksheets and stuff like that. So let me center us here as we dive in with some scripture. I'm going to share with you a passage that I've really keep coming back to even over the last number of years. And this is a passage from Philippians 4. It's Philippians 4 is a passage that has maybe one of the most proof text verses in the Bible. Proof texting means people take it out of context and use it as they want to use it. You can do it with me, I'm sure. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? So, do you know where that verse was written? That was written in a prison cell. Paul wrote that verse from a prison cell, but now we have unprepared students and athletes all over the world who say, I can do it. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Well, not exactly the same perspective that Paul was looking at. So listen to these words from Philippians 4. Rejoice in the Lord always. I'll say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything. Financial stuff, we got to repeat that one. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice. And the God of peace will be with you. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you have renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you have been concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content, and in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. Yet it was good of you to share in my troubles. Moreover, as you Philippians know, in the early days of your acquaintances with the gospel, when I set out from Macedonia, not one church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving, except you only. For even when I was in Thessalonica, you sent me aid again and again when I was in need. Not that I'm looking for a gift, but I'm looking for what may be credited to your account. I've received full payment, and even more. I'm amply supplied. Now that I have received from Epaphroditus the gifts you sent, they are a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice pleasing to God. And my God will meet all your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. To our God and Father be glory forever and ever. Amen. There's a lot in that passage. There is a lot in that passage. That's a couple sermons. So we could take a few of those verses and really just dig into those and spend a ton of time with them. I love Paul's call to say from the jump, don't be anxious. God's going to provide. God's with us by prayer and petition. So this is not just a God giving me blessings. This is us drawing near to the feet of God, to listen to the heart of God and what God is calling us to with thanksgiving. Present your requests to God. I do some fundraising. I was involved in the fundraising world. Part of what I work with around Everence as a subspecialty of mine is around charitable giving and helping people plan out how do we give most effectively and how do we give and avoid taxes. I always tell people you can have voluntary philanthropy or involuntary philanthropy. Who are you going to give it to? And I can help you give more to the charities and less to the involuntary philanthropy, which is to the government. I haven't met too many people who say I'd rather give my money to the government. So we are, that's some of what I do, but I've written a few thank you notes in my time. Have you ever heard a thank you note like this? Listen to this one. I'll summarize it for you. Paul says, thank you for your gift. I didn't need it. you needed to give it. You needed to give this. God called you to it, and God is going to bless you because of it. God is going to meet your needs. That verse from verse 19 says, and my God will supply all your needs according to his riches. You made a gift. It's not that God, thank you for the gift, and God is going to supply all my needs through your gifts. He says, you've offered a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice that's pleasing to God, and my God will meet all your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. What a great biblical equation, right? 1 + 1 = 2, and God's math is different, right? So I gave, or one, maybe we say 1 - 1, we think about giving things away, but rather than giving it away, we're actually increasing. We're increasing, and we're drawing closer to God. I think about it in kind of this way. This is one way I structure this thought in my own mind. With my keys in my hand here, I think about a lot of times the perspective that I've had in life is that God has called me to open my hands and offer to God what is rightfully God's. I believe that God owns it all, sitting on the cattle on 1,000 hills. God owns it all. It's all God's, and I just need to offer back to God what is God's. But when I've thought about that, I've thought about kind of like holding my keys, and if I open my hands like this, it falls away from me. What if we change our perspective and we start thinking about, rather than opening our hands to offer to God and it falling away, that we simply kind of stand in this posture of worship, standing with arms raised to God, and we say, God, I open my hands and it's yours. It didn't fall away from me there. I'm simply saying, my hands are no longer clenched, and what you've given me, I'm offering back to you in this place of worship and praise. And if I can stand with this posture, I'm simply opening my hands to give back to God what is rightfully his to begin with. So it's a hard posture, and I find myself, yes, God, I'm going to stand with my hands open, and I kind of go like this. And I'm like, oh, no, didn't quite get that one right. And that's okay. We kind of keep moving at these things. These are things that we're working out every day. We're working out our salvation every day. We work out what it is that God has called us to, and sometimes we get it wrong. So that's a framework for thinking about kind of our stewardship in a nutshell. How are we ordering our lives that we can say yes when God calls to us? How are we opening our lives and standing in a posture where God is saying, it's okay. It's okay not to be anxious. It's okay to loosen your grip. It's okay to not listen to the voices around us that say, you better take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of you, nobody's going to. Kind of get it, protect it, hold it. How do we stand more with that posture that opens ourselves up to what God has called us to? There's your mini sermon for the day. I'm going to put you to work now for the next little bit, and we're going to work at this I want to give you some time to think about your own story. Where have you come from? And I'm going to give you a few minutes to work on a few questions. Anybody like handing out papers? Spiritual gift of handing out papers. Yeah. That one's no, that one's right. This one we're just going to go ahead and there. There we go. And I'll take one of these myself. Thanks. Yep. You could take two. Yeah, for the overachievers among you, you can have two, right? Yeah. Oh, I gave you the. Yeah, that was a teacher's guide.
So did you give us that?
No, I gave that one's correct. Okay. You just got one to start with. Was first in that group. Okay, so let's take a look at this real quick just together before you start. What we're looking at in this space is really for you to have a time of reflection, to think about, where have I come? It's a good biblical principle of raising up our Ebenezer. You've heard that in the song, right? Our monuments in the Old Testament, God commanded them to, every once in a while, stop and build a monument. Build up a pile of rocks so that they could turn around and look back sometime to say, where have I been and where has God brought me? So this is sort of an exercise in kind of looking back, turning around and taking a look back and say, hey, where did I come from? And where has God brought me? For those of you who are with your spouse here, this is a great little exercise even to take home with you and talk about around the dinner table, or talk about now. We'll have a little bit of time to reflect on this, because we sometimes have stories from our past that we don't even think about telling, right? My wife and I look at our own financial stories, and one time I said to her, hey, things are tight right now. We need to be careful. Let's just kind of watch our spending for right now, because it's going to be a tight couple weeks until the next paycheck comes. To me, that was just like, good planning. Okay, it's tight. My growing up years, when it was tight for us, it meant we didn't get the brand name Oreos. We got the store brand Oreos. For her, that was a message of, we're getting kicked out of our house soon. Because her experience was living on the edge and being at a place. So my experience and her experience we were having the same experience now, but when we talked about that, we were talking about it in a way different way. So this is a way to kind of get to those stories a little bit and think about them, maybe even discovering for yourself. It's like, how are decisions made about money? I've never really thought about it, but yeah, Mom kind of said, this is how we're spending money and this is the way it goes. And everybody else got in the line behind that. Well, now when we talk about that now, do you have that expectation in your own life that one of us is going to be in charge and the other better get in line? So that's what this story is about, or this exercise is about. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes. The advanced among you have already started. We'll have 10 minutes to look through this. This is not being graded. This is not did you get every answer correct or done. If you have one question that you're like, wow, this one really is one that I want to spend some time in, and you don't spend any other time on the rest of the sheet, that's all good. This is for you. Okay? So starting the clock now, 10 minutes. Okay. Your little quiz here in between. I'm going to ask you to talk about these in a second, but here's your quiz. What's 1 plus 9? What's 2 plus 8? What's 20 divided by 2? What is 100 divided by 10? What's 5 times 2? 10. So we had an answer of 10, and we've got a lot of different ways of getting there, right? A lot of different ways to get there. Our tendency, oftentimes, and sometimes the expert we listen to, the tendency is to say, I got to 10 by getting 8 plus 2. And that's the way you need to get to 10 too. And the reality is, we want to get to 10. There's a lot of ways to get there. And maybe we started with 1, right? Maybe we started, if we say from a value standpoint that we didn't have much to start with and we want to get to 10, so we had some work to do. And we know some people who started at a 20 and they've subtracted, right? Maybe purposefully or not purposefully. I know some really great people, some generous people who've said, we're at a 20 and we really only need to be at a 10, so we're going to give a bunch of money away. It's a great thing. So I'm kind of even saying 10 as kind of a value thing, but just kind of thinking about it as, where are you and where are you wanting to get to? And that equation's going to look very different depending on who we are. I say you can always know when you find a good advocate, a good counselor, whether that's financial or personal or whatever, when you ask them a question and they usually say, it depends. It depends. I'm not giving you, this is the answer. I need some more information before I can help you kind of think of what's next. So that's the framework of really saying whatever you put down on your paper is not a wrong answer. Person next to you may have something completely different, and you may look at it and you may say, man, I wish I had that. I wish I had a childhood experience like that because mine was completely different. And it doesn't mean one's right and one's wrong. It means this was my experience, and this is where I'm coming from. So just a framework to say, let's share a little bit. If you are with a spouse, I would say pair up together so that you can kind of hear each other's stories that you may not have heard. You may say, oh, I heard it all before, but maybe you might be surprised. Listen closely. And for those who are not here with a spouse, just pair up with the person next to you and talk about, pick out one question that you say, this is the one question that resonated with me the most, and share about that for just like 2 minutes, okay? So we're talking like 2 minutes for each person, so we're talking 4 to 5 minutes. We're going to do this part, okay? So go ahead and turn to a person next to you, and 5 minutes starting now. Okay, let's pull back together as a big group. I always love it when there's good conversation, and I hate to cut it off, but let's cut it off. A good way I found a segue is to say, all right, let's pray. Yeah, look at that. Yep. All right, yeah. So what did you learn? Let's just open it up, not to give a big long thing, but to kind of say, here's the nugget that I took out of this. Here's the one sentence nugget that said that I was like, you know what? Here's something I haven't thought about in a long time, or here's something that I want to think about a little bit more, or maybe here's something that as we talked as a couple about this, I was like, okay, we should talk some more about this one around the dinner table. Anything come out to you? This is not everybody needing to talk, but 1 or 2 or 3 of you. What'd you think?
So, I was poor, very poor growing up, and I learned about God providing, and my parents were very big on sacrificial giving. They taught me nothing about savings. And so, through our marriage, we've been married a long time. I've kind of taught Larry more about giving, and he's taught me more about savings.
I love it. Without, I'm sure that was always very, very kind conversation, but I've never done that.
We've been married a long time.
There has been intense fellowship. You had one too?
Similar, just growing up very poor, I think the way these questions were structured, it helped me realize, like, I had a turning point in my life where I was able to overcome some tremendous debt. And I felt like because of that I've grown a lot, but when I went back to these questions I realized there's a lot of things I haven't grown from my childhood about how we treated money. That I'm like, I didn't realize that, I haven't shaken that yet. Just to realize that I grew in that one way, and I'll never go back there, but I need some other changes. So
That's great, yeah.
And to add to your analogy of how to get to 10 different ways, it was interesting, we both talked about how like we both didn't grow up with a lot of money, but her parents treated money this way and mine treated it this way. It was like, oh, we were in very similar situations but very different. Right. Money was just the bottom of it.
Great, thank you. Any others?
Basically, I was just gonna say basically the same thing, like, well, my dad didn't talk about the finances, and, you know, we were taught that we were poor, and his main goal was to save money so that when he dies, like, we'll have it. So, but it's just kind of weird because, like, we just never talked about any of that.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
I guess, well, in a similar vein, we both kind of agree that
want to say, what came up for me was how fiscally and financially naive and like in a bubble I was. I was the youngest kid, I guess that helped. But my mom worked, my dad worked. They didn't really get along very well, and so her money was her money, and his money, I guess, she spent her money. He paid bills with his money, and, you know. But no fiscal information or like any financial information was ever put on us. Like we were protected. I think that was my mom's fault, more than my dad's. But he never, showed how to balance a checkbook or any how to pay bills. That's a good thing. So it was really, I grew up thinking we basically it was weird when I think back. It's like thinking I was rich or we were rich. You know, I got all the toys I wanted on Christmas. You know, it's like so we must be rich. And it's weird thinking back and looking at that. I don't want that to be how my kids are.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. This is kind of like this pendulum we oftentimes have, right? So it's like, you know what? I grew up in a family where we never. I always wanted to play a musical instrument. And my parents said we don't have the money to buy that, and I always said to myself, when my kid wants to play an instrument, they're going to get it. They're going to have this. Or, you know what? We grew up in a family where it felt like we were all just kind of on our own, and I always said we're going to talk about this. So, it's this swing back and forth. We respond to kind of the emptiness or that space that we want to fill in our own lives, and we sometimes do that of saying, I wish I had this, by swinging the other way. So the pendulum just keeps going, swing back and forth. So it's like, how do we kind of bring that thing a little bit more into the center and kind of be wise to say, okay, we don't want to have like, I don't want my kids growing up. We joke though, we say, okay, we need to put money into the counseling fund just pretty regularly because we think we're doing an okay job, but my son's going to have his own stuff that he's going to say, oh man, my parents kind of messed this one up. I was like, okay, well, we were trying to do the best we could, and we thought we were giving you stuff we didn't have, but we kind of like poured a ton of water down your throat and almost drowned you in this other way. So, right? So it's this balance. It's kind of really coming to that place. And I'll go back to our Philippians 4 place. Do not be anxious about anything. Go to God. Go to God in prayer and petition to God and say, guide me in this. Because I'm tired of doing this swing back and forth. So we can, rather than swinging, if we can say, I'm centered in on what God is calling me to and try to keep our eyes on God, that helps us. That helps us kind of have that true north kind of place that we know that we're being guided, not just walking in circles all the time. I'll give you a break here in a second, but before I do that, let me give you a little illustration / quiz here. And we'll use this and let you think about this during the break here. Some of you may have seen this already. If you have, you can be patient with me here. All right, I've got a container, and I'm throwing some tennis balls in here. I used to have a couple more, but apparently my son wanted to play tennis. So, with that said, we're going to say, look at this container. We've got tennis balls in it, and we'll kind of, say I've got the tennis balls all the way to the top. Is that container full? Is that full? No? You got some room. Got some room to go. Well, fortunately enough, we have some racquetballs. Put in here. A few racquetballs here. Okay. Got those there now. How are we doing? Is that container full? Practically. Not getting any more tennis balls or racquetballs in there, right? We got some space. All right, well, good thing I got some ping pong balls. You're not getting that in there. Hey, watch me. Here we go. We'll get these down here, get them pushed in a little bit. Go like that. Oh, get it moved around. Oh, we'll work real hard to get that. Oh, that one popped back out. We'll get it there. All right. And I got a couple more ping pong balls in there, one of which is pretty smashed because I didn't put that in there real hard before. All right, is it full? So, is that container full now? You guys, you thinking about it? Nope. Not full yet. Oh. Well, I've got some BBs here. I always have to apologize for whoever sweeps up the floor because I usually lose a few of these. All right. How are we looking? How many did I lose on the floor? Full? Getting there? Getting there anyway. We can get more in there?
Does this have a tie? Does this have a tie into basics?
Who said water back there? All right. I can fill it in.
You're never gonna get that out of the tennis balls.
They dry out.
Oh.
I did make the mistake of putting the lid back on the tennis balls one time. I shouldn't do that. That makes my car smell. All right. How we doing? Ready to say full? Yeah, everybody? Uh-huh. All right. Well, I always have somebody. There's always some contrarian in the group who says, you could do a little more. We get some food coloring out. We could get a little bit more if we put the food coloring in or something like that. But for our purposes today, we're going to say that container is full. Okay. What did you learn? What's the point of that illustration? What did that show you?
You have a lot of balls.
Kind of done an increment.
Things are incremental, done in increments. What was over there?
You can always say more.
You can always, what was that one?
You can always say more or give more.
There's always a little bit more that you can get.
Address the big things first.
Ah, that's a good one. That's the one that I'm looking for, that I'm thinking of. When we think about this, we look at this and we say, if we work hard enough, we can make everything fit. There's a lot more that we may be able to fit in that we can't, but that's kind of the messages that we get, right? Is like you're not enough and you need to keep doing more to make more fit into your own life. What would have happened if we would have reversed this? What if I had poured the same amount of water in, and then I put the BBs in, and then I put the ping pong balls in, and then I put the racquetballs in? What happens when I get to the tennis balls? Not room. We're not going to get that in there. So here's the message that I want you to think about with this, and what the message is that I want you to be thinking about as we talk about all of this, and even your own money story, is what are the first things? So there is a great principle in and of itself of just saying, what are my first things? And am I putting first things first? I've got a lot of people who say to me, tithing is something that's really important to me. I want to be giving. I want to be generous. Great. How are you doing that? Well, at the end of the month, we see how much we have available that we can give. That's not putting first things first. If we're saying giving is important to us, then we say we need to give out of our first fruits. How do we give first? And allow God to say that's one of our first things, and allow God to trust God that first thing is going to be enough. That can be other things too. What are your first things? It could be
Mortgage?
oh yeah, getting your house paid for and paying a mortgage. You got to get that paid for. So that's the first thing in a very practical sense. Emergency fund. Getting something, especially if you don't have anything there, to say we're gonna take this money off the top first. I heard savings. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but there's a line that says pay yourself first. Pay yourself first. Because we all know that the month is way, way longer than the paycheck is sometimes, right? But we also know that when we structure things, sometimes we realize that if we structure them in a certain way, we'll be able to have enough for what we need there. So what are first things? And that's different, again, It's a 1 plus 9, 2 plus 8 kind of question. It's a different question, different framing that we're going to have, and your first thing may not be my first thing. It may be, somebody may say, somebody like my wife might say, she's from California, and around this time of year, she says to me, I'm going crazy and I need to get in the sun somewhere fast because my mental health is really taking a dive. So we have to intentionally say we're going to plan for getting away somewhere that we can get out in the sun somewhere, whether that's driving a little farther south or whatever we're doing. So to be able to do that. And other folks may look at us and say, man, they like taking these vacations. Like, yeah, sure, we like taking vacations, and we're saying that's a first thing for us, and you can check out the car I'm driving. We make our choices. I say a first thing for me is experiences and having time, valuable time with my family, and a ping pong ball is the car I'm driving. Somebody else might say, I love my car. I love my car. And I'm willing to make that more of a priority, but that means something else has got to give, right? There's Josh's job right there. Helping you kind of navigate those kind of questions. All right, let's take a little break, and we will come back together, and then I'll give you some pages that we'll start digging into a little bit more of thinking of specifics around this. If you've had, even as you've been looking through some of this stuff and kind of thinking a little bit more, that first question I asked is, what did you hope you were going to get out of this? Maybe that's changed a little bit, or maybe something has arisen in your mind that you didn't think about. Feel free to come and tell that, or store those, because we're going to try. We'll make sure we create some time at the end just to say, what are you hearing? What are your questions? And what can we talk about? So we'll have a good chunk of time at the end specifically. But if there's any questions you have as we're going on, you can feel free to raise those. So before we go to a break, let's just take that pause and say any questions that you have, or something that you're feeling like, here's something I need to say. I need to say this now. All right, take a, let's say 10-minute break, and we'll get back here at about 10:25, let's say. All right, I got my water here. I'm going to use it again. I got my water out, so I'm going to show you another little visual for you, for the visuals among you, right? What does the Bible tell us about a cup? What's the line we know about our cups? Our cups runneth over. Our cup overflows. We're going to get to the point. Look at that. God pours out blessings in our lives that let our cup overflow. It's a pretty cool thing, isn't it?
I saw it, it did.
Our cup overflows. God provides us with what we need, and I think oftentimes the overflow is what allows fruit in other places to grow. Excuse me. What's the overflow in our lives that others need to receive? What's God calling us to allow our cups to overflow so that we can be blessings on other people around us? That's a nice message, right? What's our solution in America? Money or
Bigger cup.
get a bigger cup. Right? Yeah, exactly. So how many of us are structuring our lives, or what is the temptation? What are the messages we're getting that say our cup starts overflowing and we say, okay, better get a bigger cup because that one's overflowing, and so I'm going to kind of let things grow. When I was just out of college, got my first paying job, I can tell you how old I am by telling you what my first salary was. I think I made $18,000 that first year as a teacher.
I'm honestly a lot older than you.
And I was like, $18,000, this is so much money. What am I going to do with all of this? Because I had never earned anything close to that. Well, inflation happens, cost of living happens. my salary increased over the course of time. And interesting thing is that suddenly it wasn't like, oh, I made 18,000 and now I make 30, so I've just got 12 grand laying around. Doesn't happen that way, does it? We find things for it. Unless we are intentional about saying, how big is my cup? And I'm not saying, hey, you should stick to that first salary and how much you made there. Our budgets grow, inflation happens, families grow, needs change. But I am saying the temptation in our culture is always to tell you, get the bigger cup. Get the bigger cup, keep as much for yourself as you can. If you're making $1 million, you earned it. You have a right to spend every last penny of that. Right? What happens if we start looking at things differently and say, what's the size that God has really come to? You know, you go through the drive-thru, and what's the first question they ask you? You want to go large? No, they just kind of like assume. They kind of like just suggestive sell you into saying, this is what you should have. This is what's normal. My neighbor's got a big cup. Why should I have a big cup? So there's a first step for you right from the jump there in thinking of your budgeting. As we move into thinking of budgeting, is really thinking about what is God calling me to as far as the supersized life, I'll call it. Do we want to supersize this? Do we want to go large? Or is God calling us to say, you know what? Let your cup overflow. Let's create a life that has overflow, not a life that's saying, I'm going to build bigger barns so I can have it for myself. Do you have a comment back here?
Well, you're saying about what you do, our commercials are always telling us we deserve this. You know, I saw a commercial that said I deserve a Cadillac.
Yeah, you do.
I didn't know why.
So there's a good definition of grace for you, right? You know what you deserve. The Bible tells us we deserve death. So, do you really want what you deserve, right? We get something different. God has given us the grace that we have of a God who loves us so much that he did what? God so loved the world that he gave. God so loved the world that he gave. And if God loved the world so much that he gave, what do you think God's calling us to? Maybe loving the world so much that we should give, that we should allow our cups to overflow. Anybody read your Bible and know Romans 7? What's Romans 7 say to you? What's that?
Romans 7 where it says the things I want to do I don't do, and the things I should do I...
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So here is financial planners and pastors have a very similar job, I think. Because this is pastor's job security right here. This is financial planner's job security. Here is right here to say, what shall we say then? Is the law sin? Certainly not. Indeed, I would not have known what sin was except for through the law. For what I would not have known what coveting really was if the law had not said, do not covet. Let me skip that a little bit. Did that which is good then become death to me? By no means, but in order that sin might be recognized as sin and produce death in me through what was good, so that through the commandment sin might become utterly sinful. I know the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual. I'm unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate to do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is, it's no longer I myself who do it, but it's sin within me. For I know that nothing good lives in me that is in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. I have the desire to do what I want to do, but I can't carry it out. For what I do is not the good I want to do. No, The evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. Now if I do what I do not want to do, it's no longer what I who do it, but it's sin living in me. It's almost like a Dr. Seuss passage there. I do what I don't want to do, and I do. But there's financial planners and pastors' life in a whole. I could say to you, what do you want to do? And you could tell me, do you believe that this is true? I do believe that it's true. Now go do it. That one's the hard part. That's the hard part. And I think the big part of what we do is putting into alignment what we say we believe with what we're actually doing. Right? And there's budgeting for you. There's a simple definition of a budget for you is laying out my plans and saying what I want to do, but I know that I don't do what I want to do, so I better figure this out and give myself some structure to be able to do it. Okay? When I say the word budget, what do you think of that? Is that, okay, put your hand out with the thumb sideways here. Budget, good, bad, good. Where do you go? Maybe you're somewhere in between. Give me a dial. Is a budget like, I love my budget and I can't stand not looking at it? Or is it like, oh, man, it just tells me, I always look at my budget and I'm like, man, I stink at this. So where do we got? Give me your measure again. Give me that gauge. Where are you at? Okay. Somewhere in between, a couple of you are like, oh, we got double thumbs up, different places.
Some of you are like,
Where should I be? What do you think about fences? Do you have an opinion about a fence? What function does a fence have? You have a dog. A dog is a very helpful thing, both in keeping your dog from running out into traffic or keeping him off the neighbor's lawn, or a lot of different functions.
Keeps people out.
Yep. So it serves as a boundary line for us. It might keep people out who you don't want in, or keep things out that you don't want in. If you live with a lot of deer around, you might have a barrier to keep them out of your garden because they use everything. Protective gives us a hedge that we can say, okay, it's safe on this side. We got to watch ourselves on that side.
In New England, they say good fences make good neighbors.
That's right. Yep. Yep. Good fences make good neighbors. Because we know the expectations that we have of each other, even just in a physical way with that. I think budgets are like that. If we can view our budget in that way to say our budget is really a place that creates an area that we can have complete freedom in, it changes that. A lot of people think of a budget as constraining me, holding me in. And if you're in a prison, a fence means something different to you, doesn't it? That's keeping me in and eliminating my freedom. If I have a school that's situated right next to a major highway, a fence provides an immense amount of freedom. I can say to the kids, there's the playground. Without a fence, I'm saying you better stay close. You have no freedom. You need to be here because out there is unsafe. If I create a space that says, we've got boundaries, we've got physical spaces, we've got a wall that I know you are safe on this side, you are free. You are free within these boundaries to operate as you will. Can I hand these out again? So as those papers are going out, I want to give you 3 simple rules. 3 simple rules. On the back of that money autobiography, if any of you got bored and were already reading on that side, you can see the 3 simple rules listed at the top. And this is a handout that I've used specifically around teaching our kids about money, but there are principles that extend beyond just that. But let me give you these three simple rules that we can think about. Thank you. In managing the gifts God's given us. Rule number 1, spend less than you earn. Downright un-American, isn't it? Spend less than you earn. Who ever heard that? I've got credit card debt, and I like my credit card debt. I just, spend less than you earn. So if you're living at your means, if you earn $1,000 a week as a paycheck, and you are spending $1,000 a week, you can say, I'm doing fine. I'm spending, we're at zero and we're fine. How many of you have ever had a car breakdown on you? Yeah? Cars break down. Kind of the cost of doing business of driving a car. And how many of us say, I was doing fine and then an unexpected expense came along. It's like, what was that? My car broke down. How is that unexpected? Cars break down and we need to think about these things. And so building our budget is a way of spending less than you earn. Less than you earn is actually living below your means. Right? So if you are spending less than you earn, you're always giving yourself some space to have your savings. Within your budget as well, you can also construct things to say, I'm going to pay myself first, so that I'm making sure that my savings is actually part of my budget. So, spend less than you earn, principle number 1. Principle number 2, save now, buy later. Again, downright un-American, right? Save now, buy later. How many of you have had an experience like that where you've needed to save and you you saved up and you were able and eventually to make that purchase? Anybody have that experience? How does that feel to you? It feels like a sense of accomplishment when you do that. We get the credit card out, and let me just take a step back to say when I talk about credit cards, I have a view of credit cards that credit cards, like money, are a very useful tool, right? But if I am indebted to them, if I am a slave to them, then suddenly they are ruling me, I am not ruling them. So money and credit, to me, I think of as kind of like fire and water, okay? Anybody like to live in a world without water? No, we need water. Anybody have a basement that likes to flood sometimes? So we need to control the water around us, and we've seen like the tsunamis and things like that happen, and the destructive power that water can have if we don't keep it under control. I don't want to live in a world without water, and if I know water can be destructive sometimes. How about fire? Got a nice fireplace in my house. I really enjoy that on a cold winter, being around the fireplace. If I came home and there was a fire in the middle of my living room, that's a problem. So, fire and water are not good or evil. They are tools that we need to control, and we need to make sure we're taking care of. Cash and credit, I think, in the same way. Credit can be really useful in some circumstances. But if you let it get out of control, if you're using it that it's controlling you, there's the problem, and we need to address that. So save now, buy later means that I'm making plans to be able to purchase things moving forward, not saying I'm going to buy this now and pay for it later. If you think of present, past, and future spending, what is present spending? It's for the things around us that we need now. What's past spending? That's your debt. I've already done it. I got my first credit card when I took a year off between high school and college. And in that year, I had an income enough that they gave me a credit card. This was back when getting credit cards was a little harder. And I was like, I got a credit card. This is amazing. And then I went to college and I discovered that Burger King took credit. That was when they first started taking credit. That's how old I am. Used to have to go into Burger King and pay cash. Weird, huh? Well, I ate a lot of hamburgers that I paid 99 cents for at the time, but they cost me a lot more than that. Because I had past spending that I was paying for years after that. Because I built up this credit card debt and, spent my present spending paying for my past purchases and consumption. That's not smart debt. So past debt or past spending, we can think of as debt. Future spending, what's our future spending? Savings. Right? So we can spend now to say we have these dollars that are available to us to spend in the future. And that's where our savings come into play. So our goal is really to, that third line there, no debt. And you notice the spelling of that is not an N-O debt, it's a K-N-O-W debt. Know your debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt. What do you think of when I say good debt? What do you think of as good debt? Mortgage. That's a big one. Because there's a lot of things that some people that can write a check for their house, but I've never had that. I can't pay for that out of my cash flow. But home ownership is, for many of us, was a goal and is something we aspire to and something we need to go into get debt to be able to do. So that's good debt. What's bad debt? Credit cards. What was that one?
I said car loans too.
Car loans. So in broad sweeping terms, I'll put it to you this way. I'll say good debt is debt on appreciating assets. If you have something that you know is going to grow in value over the years, and for most of us, our homes are things that are appreciating in their value. Appreciating meaning they're rising over the course of time. So if I pay $100,000 for a house now and have to make my mortgage payment plus interest, but in some course of time, the value of that house is going to continue to increase. It's not true across the board. We had for those of you who are old enough, you remember 2008. You probably don't remember 2008. Wasn't around then. But 2008, we had a real estate bubble where the values of houses rose beyond what they were really, and the bubble popped on us. So that's one instance where we thought we had debt that was for appreciating assets, and we ended up taking a big step back on some of those. So even on the rules that we say, yep, we can't say mortgage loans are always good. Just like, what would you consider student loans? Is that good debt or bad debt?
Jury's out on that one.
That's correct. So if you go to school and take on a bunch of debt to be a major in historic 18th century American art, that's probably bad debt. And I have a question that you need to repeat after me if you have that major. Would you like fries with that? Because that's probably the job you're going to get. So in that kind of circumstance, it's probably bad debt. You've probably spent some money that you're not going to be able to pay back. Now, I could say to you, if somebody says, that is one of my big rocks. And that's an expense that I am willing to pay because I love that. Because you could say, is going to seminary, is getting pastoral education appreciating or depreciating? You might have paid a lot of money for that, but it's like, this is what God called me to do. God has placed this call in my life. And it has to be one of the things that I'm going to do what doesn't make sense in everyday life. We have spaces like that. So, student loan debt. That's a big one for us. And I think student loan debt overall has actually overtaken credit card debt as the source of debt that has a lot more people are working through student debt than they are with debt, credit card debt. That's shifting again though. We had in COVID, interestingly enough, we had a lot of folks get out of debt. And once they got out of debt, they said, never again. I'm not getting back into debt. And why do I do the things that I don't want to do? I keep doing it. I don't learn. I keep making the same mistakes. I am a slave to sin. So there's your 3 simple rules. If we can organize our lives around these, it solves a lot of the problems. Spend less than you earn. Save now, buy later, and no debt. K-N-O-W debt. And some of that takes some wisdom and discernment. We can see it's not always just that's right and that's wrong. If I'm going to school that's going to give me the opportunity to earn in a different way, or if I'm going to school and taking on debt in an area that's able to allow me to serve in a different way. That's debt that we may want to take on. So this sheet in front of you is the one I gave you, right? Yep. Here's a budget. Here's a sample budget. And if you don't have a budget, I like this one because this budget actually gives you some percentages and ways. It's not just a blank slate to say, hey, here are, you should fill in numbers for this. And you may say, I have no idea. I have no idea how to handle this. But let's just look through them real quick. What I spend and your earnings and your income per month. Okay, here's your pop quiz for you that I think all of you should be able to answer. If you earn, let's use $50,000 as a nice round number in here. $50,000 salary in a year's time. Can you budget $50,000? No. Why not?
Because you don't take that much home.
Nope. Guess what? And that's when I talk to high schoolers and college graduates, they are amazed. They don't know how much taxes actually are taken out of it. They say, okay, so you earn $50,000 a year. How much do you think you can put on the top line? I don't know, 48,000. I am sorry, but that is not true. I think of it at about 25%. And you're going to have to look at what it is, but there's between our state, local taxes, you're probably, what do you use, Josh?
That's a percentage.
Yeah, do you kind of have a...
It varies between people live, but it's a lot.
Yep, 25%. You can look at your own, kind of just, I would say, as you're budgeting, don't think about your salary. Think about what does your check say? What's the check amount that's coming into your pay each month? And there's tax strategies. There's some strategies that you can talk through to say, so how can I be most tax efficient and have things to lower my taxes in order for some of that future spending? We have things like retirement plans, which are great in that they say, we're going to allow you to save this money now, not pay taxes now, but guess what? When it comes time to withdraw, you're going to pay taxes then. It depends on what you're earning at that point. So that's some withdrawal strategies that Josh, we're gonna get to that at the end. We're gonna ask you that. So prepare your answer now. He's ready to go. So when you are figuring out that top line, make sure you're thinking about the things that you actually have at your discretion to spend. Okay. If I think of an easy kind of a formulaic way to think about this as a way to start. You remember way back in the day, for those of you old enough, there was this presidential candidate named Herman Cain, Godfather pizza guy. He used to say, 999 was his scenario. So I think of 999 when I say this, but this is 70, 10, 10, 10. Think of that calculation. 70 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 equals 100. So good job. You passed the first test. 70, 10, 10, 10. 70% is for our spending needs, our everyday needs. 10% for giving. 10% for short-term savings. 10% for long-term savings. Some people do 80-20. They say savings is 10%. Some people do 80-20 and they say, I don't really want to give. Other people do 90-10. Some people do 110. We don't want to be in that scenario. But if you think of breaking that out and thinking of what's my take-home pay, and let's think of breaking this out of even 70, 10, 10, 10, you take that 70% of that top line, and that's what I have available for my daily living expenses. Now that's not like our 8 plus 2, 9 plus 1 scenario. That's not going to be the same for everybody. That's a starting place that you can say, here's something we can think about of the scenario that we can work through. Savings. In this scenario, they're suggesting 15%. This comes out of a book that I used for a long time called Good Sense Budgeting. Was out of Willow Creek Church in Chicago. So they have, it's changed the name, is now Freed Up Financial Living. But this is kind of this construct that they help kind of form around. Debt. We need to be thinking about, do you have debt and how are you going to take care of it? We'll talk about some strategies for debt in a minute. But debt, you need to be able, debt's not going to go away on its own. In fact, debt's going to increase if you don't pay attention to it. Yes?
Quick question. Is this like in order of how they should be addressed, would you say?
Not necessarily. It's more of just the whole picture, kind of ordering them out. But I would say, yes, and. It depends kind of question. So, housing may be something that, the suggestion here for them is you should think about a goal range of 25 to 36% is going towards housing. Sometimes we might have been in a situation where, hey, we had, my grandmother left me some money for purchasing a house. Wonderful thing if you have that grandma. Mine did not. So for those folks, you may have somebody who, I have a niece who, her husband, grandmother left them a bunch of money and said, this is for the purchase, the down payment for your first house. I think she left them like $200,000. So what an amazing gift. And for them, they should not be paying 25% of their housing because they've got a lot of their house paid for. So it kind of depends. It kind of depends on where you're at with that kind of stuff. You might have somebody who said, we barely could get together the down payment for this house, and we had to take an additional loan, piggyback loan, in order to even get the down payment. And that means some more money that we think it's the right decision to be in this house, but we actually have about 95%, maybe more than that, of the house value that we owe. We might have to put a little bit more towards that. It depends. And again, I go back here. What's the first things for you? So if you say first things are giving. I want to give. Well then, yeah, let's start about first fruits giving. And I would say I think that's a biblical principle that we think about giving out of our first and our best, just like the Old Testament model that God has called us to do that. And I can also tell you that if you don't put that one first, it's probably not going to get that much. So debt, paying attention to those kind of things, making sure you're servicing that. Housing, auto and transportation. We oftentimes talk about defining what are needs and what are wants or desires, right? And this is, again, one of those it depends kind of spaces. I work with a lot of churches in Philly, and there's a lot of people I know in Philly that don't have a car because public transportation is available and they can make it around. I don't think you could probably make it here without a car. I couldn't make it in Sourton without a car. So, need or want, it depends on your situation. I've been doing this long enough that when I started in 2007, we talked about cell phones as needs or wants, right? It was like, oh, that's completely optional. Nobody needs a cell phone. Nobody needs a cell phone. The jury's out on that one, I guess, now to say, is it a need or a want? I don't know. I would, yeah.
You won't be able to log into your bank account.
Yeah. So, yeah. So things change like that too, in the situations we're in. Now, I will have a conversation of, does your 7-year-old need a phone? I don't know about that, but, hey, maybe your 7-year-old does need a phone. I don't know. Is there some situation where it's like I need to, for a safety reason, they need to have access in some way so that there's an emergency they need to, I don't know. There could be some situations that you may say yes. But, again, it depends, and let's pay attention to what are the first things. So auto and transportation, unfortunately, I wish it weren't the case. And we also can say, do you deserve a Cadillac? Oh, that was yours, right? I deserve a Cadillac? I don't know. Do you deserve a Cadillac? I am not going to make that judgment for you, but I will say it depends. It depends on what your situation is. Do you need, if you rely on your livelihood, it's partly, I need a work truck. I need to have transportation. Well, then, for you, a $70,000 truck may be something that's a need, and you, because I want to be able to go to the flea market and haul things home, I don't know if that's really necessary to have a $70,000 car to be able to do that. But
Another quick question. Are you pointing at the balls or the Bible?
the Bible. Yeah. Both.
Yeah, right.
We're right next to each other. I was pointing at the first things.
Okay.
The first things is what I was pointing at. So I'm making this really muddy for you because I just keep saying it depends.
Got it.
Right? And that's true. It is muddy for you, and I would say, so you need to be thinking through, you need to be thinking of your own situation. You may need to get somebody to help you with that. And I know that you should be praying and petitioning, like Philippians calls us to. Praying and petitioning God to give you wisdom and to know how to do this. Household personal, insurances. Some of this stuff is going to come out of your paycheck, and you can decide. Like health insurance for if you have a job that pays your health insurance. Some of those premiums are going to come out at the front side. You could budget that to say, I've got health insurance and I want to know what that is. You may just say, health insurance is not going to be included in my budget because it's included in my paycheck, and just go with the take-home pay. What works for you is fine on either of those, but you need to account for that one way or the other. Don't say, I've got this money and then don't account for that as income and then not count it on your budget if you're doing it that way. You want to make sure every dollar has a go. But you do need to pay attention to auto, homeowners, life, medical, dental. There's some strategies that you can start using with that, with pre-tax dollars that you can put in that. If you have FSAs, some of you have heard of. There's actually a new category of FSA in the last number of years for vision and dental specifically. That's something that's offered through your employer. So many of us today have health insurances that are high deductible plans, where you may pay $3,000 or $6,000 out of pocket before to satisfy the deductible. If you have that and you know you've got medical costs that are coming, you should be budgeting towards being able to take care of those deductibles too. Those aren't unexpected costs, but they're not always costs that we think about. So be thinking about that and budget for those kind of things as well. If you have access to a health savings account, that's also a really tax efficient way to pay for some of those things. So taxes, government at least has given us some places that we have some tax advantages, and health things are one of those that you could say, I can put money into a health savings account that goes in before taxes are taken out, goes in tax-free, and then when you have qualifying health costs, you can pay that out of your health savings account. For the advanced among you, health savings account have become a very popular way, pseudo-retirement account as well. So if you're able to pay your health costs out of your cash flow, out of your daily budget, you can let that health savings account build up over the years, and it's better than a retirement account because it's tax-free in, tax-free growth, tax-free out if you're paying medical expenses. So a lot of people are using that as another way to save for retirement, knowing that my health costs are going to be there in my senior years. And so this is a nest egg to kind of build up over the course of the time that I'm never going to pay taxes on it. It's better than a retirement plan because a retirement plan is tax-free in. Then you've got the growth, but then you're paying, when you take the distribution, you're going to pay taxes on it. This is better because you let it go in without taxes, it comes out without taxes. Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on some of like the ministries like Samaritan's Purse or like Christian Health Ministries or insurance options, or is that too personal a question?
I'd have to look at your individual situation. Josh, you run into that a little bit more with helping people kind of think through that?
Just overall.
Yeah, I mean, it can be helpful based on your budgeting, what access you have to health insurance. I don't deal a whole lot with that. I mean, we have a whole Medicare supplement team. They deal with all that portion, but
yeah,
it works. It's just a little different. It takes longer to sometimes reimburse. That's how it works. But in the day, you got to do what fits within your budget as such. So if you get it through work, it's usually better plans. But if you're self-employed and you're just trying to search marketplace versus one of these products, I would definitely consider it.
The downside for some of those plans is they often limit the amount that you can put in for claims, and it's not always a very high limit. And I mean, even if we're talking a $500,000 lifetime limit, it seems like a huge number, but
you have an emergency.
Yeah, you've got something that is a cancer or some ongoing kind of thing, you can get to that point pretty quick. So, yeah. And we never count on that stuff, right? It's, I just had a colleague who was telling me a story to say that we were talking about life insurance. And he said, hey, I have a 45-year-old neighbor who was a runner, super great shape, and she said a year ago she was looking at insurance, and she said, I'll get a little bit now and then, but I'll push it off a little bit and I can get some later. She got a cancer diagnosis, and she's never going to be able to get life insurance again. So it's those kind of situations that I can say now, I'm like, oh, well, this is a good decision, but we don't know what life is going to throw at us, and so sometimes, so it's kind of looking at all that together and really taking, some of it is trying to make our best choices we can, and kind of thinking about what's going to happen in the future too, and mitigating that kind of stuff. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Household, personal. I think some of these, especially in category 8, the entertainment, are our budget killers. These are our budget killers because they are things that we we're not very good at estimating sometimes what we actually are spending on some of this stuff. Or, okay, I'll use an example like this that you can see in this line, personal, tobacco and alcohol is included in that. Okay? Should you be smoking? Should you be drinking? Hey, if you are, you should be budgeting for it. And a lot of people look at that and they say, okay, I'm going to take out my cigarette money because I want to quit. Well, guess what happens most of the time in that circumstance? They don't quit, and it's killing their budget. So we need to take a very plain view, be very realistic with yourself of what it is you're actually spending. Plan for what is truth at this moment. Okay? Budgets are not aspirational documents necessarily for yourself. You could say a budget tells you a lot about your mission and your purpose. If you show me your budget, I can say, based on your budget, I'm going to name what these first things are for you. Because you're allocating things toward that. But like I said, you can't say this is what I want to be, and I'm going to budget for what I want to be. Budget for what you are right now. And when you become what you want to be, you got extra money. You got extra money in your budget. Dining out is a huge one, right? A couple years ago, some statistics I heard, I think it's been close to 10 years ago, there was a shift that said we now eat more meals outside of the house than we do at home. You say, no way. I was like, well, on the way to work, I stop at Dunkin' and I usually pack my lunch, but I actually don't ever get to do that. So 4 days a week, I actually end up just getting a slice at the restaurant next door or whatever. 2 meals a day right there. And then I got home and I said, I'm really tired. I really don't feel like cooking, so let's just order. So that's a reality of what we're doing and maybe a choice that we're making. But again, think about those things. Budget for what you are doing. If that's a reality of this is what we're doing, is we're eating out, well then you need to be budgeting for what's happening with that. And your grocery budget might be smaller because of that. So budget for what you is reality now, not for what you aspire to, and use your budget as a lens to say, okay, there's an area that I need to change. Okay. Professional services, if you have childcare that you need to do, that's one to consider and thinking of as well. And there are some tax preferred ways, tax efficient ways to take care of that too, with some FSA dollars too. So know those kind of things. So how do you do this? How do you get to where you want to be in that way? What are strategies? Has anybody had a budget that you said, yep, we had a budget and we were able to stick to it and this worked for us? And you say, this is how it worked for us. Anybody want to give the 1 minute scenario for how your budget worked for you? Yeah.
Years ago, I had envelopes, and I put the cash in this envelope for food, this envelope for car insurance, this envelope, and it was great.
Mm-hmm.
It was all cash, no credit cards.
Yep. The envelope system is a really effective way for folks to do. It's harder. It's a little harder in today because a lot of stuff we don't spend cash on. We can do a hybrid of that, though. So here's a suggestion for you. Do you have, are you spending more than you want to on dining out? Are you spending, our office, so we had an old office that had a really good coffee shop next door to us. And I could just walk over and grab a cup of coffee whenever I wanted from, and I love coffee, so that became a problem. I was like, wow, I'm spending a lot of money at the coffee shop. So you can use a modified hybrid kind of cash system where you say, okay, I'm giving myself my $20 that I get to spend at the coffee shop a month. And that's in an envelope. What I did was every month I would go and buy myself a gift certificate from the coffee shop next door. So the woman behind the counter started signing them to Randy, part Randy from myself. You knew what I was doing? She's like, why are you buying gift cards for yourself? I'm like, well, it's a way for me when I know when that value gets down to zero, if it's on the 10th of the month, guess what? Better be brewing some coffee at home, yeah. And I didn't plan very well. I drank too much coffee at the beginning of the month. But you can do that with a lot of different things, especially for problem areas of your budget or budget areas that you want to make sure you're paying attention to. That's a great strategy, just to go, you know what, we're spending way too much money on eating out. So we're going to say, here's the money we have available for that month. We're going to actually pay cash every time we go out to eat. That's not that big of a deal. Paying your electric bill in cash might be a tough one. But paying, most restaurants accept cash most of the time. Some don't. Yeah. So there's a hybrid way of looking at that, of kind of doing that. I know some folks that like credit cards specifically because they have software or they have monitoring or they can actually look at it and it helps them to kind of see what it is they're spending on. It's way easier to keep track of things because if I have $20 in my pocket and I come home and I'm like, what did I spend that on today? Unless I'm getting receipts from each person, may not necessarily remember. But the credit card statement can be a useful tool, but again, if you got a fire in your middle of your living room with your credit card, that's not an effective tool for you. Keeping track of your house burning down is not a useful tool. I know exactly what I did to burn my house down. What other experiences do you have or questions that come up as I kind of walk through that with budgeting? One caveat I'll say too is, especially as you're starting out a budget, your first budget, I would say don't make too many categories. Sometimes we get really microscopic and go, okay, I'm breaking out like for my auto, I kept track of how much I paid for gas and how much I paid for service and how much I paid for tolls and how much it gets too much. It's too much information that paralyzes you sometimes.
It's more work and you don't keep up with it.
Exactly. Yep. So if you say auto, okay, so auto as a whole is one category. That's easier for you to track, and it's one item. I mean, you could have a budget that has 10 categories on it if you take out all of these little categories underneath it. So, but it may be helpful for you to have those subcategories. So, kind of depends on your situation. You have a comment?
Yeah, so for us, I think we got tripped up a little bit when we would try to do the whole month. And so now what works better for us is week by week.
Uh-huh.
And so we have, and we're both very visual people. And so we have a board in our kitchen where we have the money in.
I love it.
And then it's a running total of like, okay, well, this is this week's bills that are going to come out with the next paycheck. Groceries, gas for the car. And that's been, I think, the most impactful thing is just being able to see that number. And sometimes the number at the bottom is, okay, there's $25 until the next paycheck. But we know that we're not spending, or if there's something that needs to come out of that $25, we have to talk about it, and it better be good.
Yeah.
Because
you're making some choices.
But those visuals, that visual has been very helpful for the two of us to just stay on track. And quiet spending is sometimes the hardest one for in between a marriage. And it feels silly to have to talk about $5.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but sometimes you do.
Yeah. A strategy my wife and I have is early on we started with what we called our personal allowance. We just phrased it as that to say, hey, here's the things that we want that we don't need to account to the other person for. And you have, she's got $100 a month or whatever the number is to say, this is your dollars. If you wanna spend that all on, something special that you want, you don't have to account for that to me, and that's your dollars. And that came out of kind of that money autobiography for us too, because she grew up in a family where things were tight, and she felt like, I can't buy a pack of gum without talking to you about this. And like, it's okay, you can buy the gum. That's, here's the dollars that you have that at your disposal to take care of. We translated that to my son. My son, as I mentioned, is a junior in college now. From the time he was about, I think we started when he was like 4 years old, with having that kind of allowance. We said, we'll give you $1 per month for every year of age you are. So at 4 years old, he got $4 a month. We had a little trick with him, though. He hasn't ever come back to me on this one and complained about it. But we said, of that $4, half is for your spending. So you get $2 for spending. One of it is for savings, and one of it's for giving. So I was making him give 25%. He never came back and said, you made me give that way more than I should have. But that was a really useful tool for us because it also gave him freedom. Now, he's a unique kid. So, but we never had begging in the lines of the store, because I'd say to him, you want that piece of candy? Well, you've got $2. Your choice. Don't want it. Or I really do want it. So he got to make his choice. And he grew over the course of time. We started rolling things like, okay, so your yearly budget for your clothing is, this dollar amount, and I'm going to have you manage that too. Started kind of giving him some ways to flex his muscles on that and control his own spending. And then here's the problem for me. Dad had to take a step back because he shows up with $100 pairs of shoes, and I'm like, what are you doing spending $100 on shoes? And he's like, well, those were important to me, and I bought my jeans at the thrift store. I was like, well, what do I have to say about that? That's exactly what I'm wanting him to do, is to make those choices. And he said, the shoes are in my clothing budget. I'll wear thrift store jeans. I want the good shoes. I want the nice shoes. Okay, that's your choice. You made that choice, and I need to honor that. I also, part of what we gave him a credit card and a debit card early on when he was younger than many. He thought he was the coolest kid in school because he could flash his credit card in places. But we kept track of it, and I took the philosophy of I'd rather have him mess up with a $100 credit limit than when he gets out of his first credit card and drives the car off a cliff with a $5,000 credit limit that he's going to take a long time to get out. So again, it's not true. It's again, and it depends kind of space, because you might have a kid that you're like, that's not going to work too well for us. It's an example. I just give that as an example of some ways to kind of both manage your own personal stuff, but also teaching our kids about money, giving them. I always thought about what my end goal as a parent was to produce a child who is a follower of Jesus and somebody who serves the community and does well there. So that's who I want to produce. So I'm not going to just flip a switch and say that there. We got to give them some places to practice that. And that's what I think we want to do, as we're teaching our kids about money too. Was there a comment? Yep.
Yeah. Just, do you have like a format or for the age factor for kids, like what you should introduce them to when something was suggested?
I don't have anything like that, but I'm sure there are some things that you can find with that. That'd be an interesting one of like, at what age is it like developmentally appropriate to kind of be able to kind of
work this in, work that in.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. That's a good one. Yeah.
I'll just add on to that question. It's a great question, But again, my favorite answer and the one that I've been prepping for the questions to come, it depends. How many have had more than one kid and then all act the same? And so there's going to be a grace period of, well, this kid is a little more developed and is good with responsibility, but there's ones that, it'll take time. But it's a great question.
Yeah, maybe it's more geared toward attributes that they display, keying on that rather than age.
I'll also say communication. It's not always verbal. So my family didn't necessarily discuss financing a whole lot, but I would see money going into the offering. I would see them doing this and that. And so sometimes you living a certain way, kids pick up on a lot.
I had a question.
Yeah.
No, this is a big difficult. Back to like the shared budget.
Yeah.
We just started doing budget not too long ago, and one of the things we run into is, are there good apps for sharing the data? So he keeps it on his computer, so at any point in the month, I don't necessarily know where I'm at. But we tried an app years ago and we found it didn't work because it didn't have the features we needed to succeed.
Yeah.
Or even just an app where I can upload my receipts throughout the day or week, so that when we sit down to sort through the budget at night, I can recall what dollar amount was what category.
Yeah.
The problem with apps is there's 100 for everything, and how do you know which one is gonna give you what you need? I don't know.
Yeah. They change so frequently. It's hard to kind of like Mint. A lot of people use Mint for a long time, and Mint just left. That didn't work for you, and they just shut it down. Yeah. So a lot of people who use Mint suddenly are like, we can't. And Mint's one of those examples of it was a good tool for a lot of people, and it was free. So guess what? If it's free, you're the product. So they were aggregating. They used you. They were using their users as aggregate, kind of looking at spending habits and being able to say to marketers, hey, this is how people are spending their money. We'll sell you that data. And some people said, whatever, I don't care. And others, personally, I'll tell you what I use, and it's just it's not like this is what you should do. I've used Quicken for many years. It's a personal finance stuff that I just keep on my own computer. It doesn't share, though. You can do an online version of it that you can see some of it. But there's a ton of tools out there. There's one called You Need a Budget, YNAB, that I know some people have liked. And that one is more of a zero-based kind of thing where they say it's basically giving every dollar a job. Say your dollars are coming in, and we're going to budget. We're budgeting on the front side. So we're going to, rather than budgeting to your paycheck, they're kind of saying, okay, this month you're going to start with almost like a digital wallet system. We're saying there's $200 in this envelope, and we're going to take this down till you're going to zero. Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned it or not. It's the usefulness of debit card versus credit cards.
Debit versus credit.
It's almost like a gift card in a sense. I mean,
Yeah. It's debit cards are a good thing if you are struggling with paying down your credit. Again, I'm in a little bit of the hybrid. I know that some Ramsey teaching would say don't use credit cards. I'm more in the camp of saying that fire and water kind of place. If you can use it effectively, really good way to use it. If you are struggling, if you are not paying off your credit every month, right? If you're carrying a balance, that's when I would start looking at what strategy you're doing. If you're being able to pay that to your balance, you get the credit card statement every month, and you just pay it in full. That can be a good tool. I want to know if you're kind of carrying balances. If you're doing the juggle, the 0% juggle, if you can get it, your low interest kind of thing, that's one that's hard to sustain, and it kind of sucks the life out of you after a little bit.
Like my debit is obviously it's tied. It's my checking account. So basically, it's like I normally work the numbers at the end of the month, but if I wanted to, I mean, given the lag between when it registers,
Mhm.
I mean, which is usually maybe a couple days, if not that day, you can review like to that point in time, you know, what you spent on a particular time period.
Yeah.
And, you know, and kind of organize the categories according to your budget and see, oh, I've really exceeded my budget for
Yeah.
a little bit after the fact, but I mean, you can track it.
Mhm. Yeah, and so some banks are, it depends on if you have a bank that provides ways to track it, a debit card can be a useful tool in that way to have that. We had some things with some of the big banks where they were actually structuring the ways that the ways that you were being debited or credited in your account to create more fees for themselves. So if they said, okay, today we got your check was deposited and you had a zero balance, your check was deposited, and then you had a debit card charge. They were switching them to say you had a debit card charge, you got a penalty because it was zero, and then we credited your account for your checking.
I actually had an experience in my early 20s where I was bad about that, where things flew waitress, so I couldn't always get my cash in the next day in time.
Yeah.
And I finally got so sick of it, I did the math for a whole year, I'll say 2020, 2004, whatever it was. I added it up and I had paid close to $900 in overdraft fees in 1 year.
Yeah.
And I've not paid
No.
because it was so shocking to me.
Yeah.
How much I was losing.
Mm-hmm.
And because they would do that, they would shift things around so that it was taking money before it was putting money in.
Yeah, you gotta have a comfortable buffer in there.
Yeah.
If you
We
want to avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah. So just being aware of those kind of things and being, knowing that can come up, and planning for that, and to get partners who you know you can trust. So if you have a bank like that that's kind of structuring that and they're trying to wring every last little bit of fee out of you, then you might want to consider a community bank or a local bank that doesn't do that, or a credit union, which are basically like nonprofit banks.
I have two questions, I hope they're short. Is it true that with a credit card, like you're paying it off every month, that can, if you're building your credit, that will mean certain things cost less in the future?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not true with a debit card?
Debits don't go towards your credits.
And then, I've heard this, is this true or not true, or is it depends? That if you make your kids a co-signer of your credit card, that's building credit for them as they age. So when they're 18, if you sign it over to them, they have the credit built in the last X amount of years.
That used to be true with certain institutions. Not every institution kind of operates under their own set of rules.
Okay.
So some of them would report them as separate, and you would be building credit. I think most of the time they kind of go with the primary at this point.
Okay.
So it is, you can build credit, and building credit's important. And you could check with your institution to see how they report that. Or you could pull a credit report and see how that's being reported. You can see it on your child's credit report if they have any data there. Sometimes they don't until they're a certain age too. So I'll talk about credit scores too. I'll give you this information sheet, but credit scores are an important piece. Here's a good one that of where to get your credit score. How much do you think a credit report at freecreditreport.com costs? Funny thing, Truth in Advertising is freecreditreport.com. It's a commercial site that's not necessarily free. But annualcreditreport.com is a clearinghouse for the three credit agencies that you can go and you can request a credit report. They by consumer protections, they need to give you a free credit report on certain intervals. I think each credit agency needs to give you one per year. You could pull them all at once, or you could go to each of the individual credit agencies at that annualcreditreport.com place and get one like every 4 months if you want to. So that's a good That's a good practice. If you haven't looked at your credit report, I would encourage you to do that. We have a partner called Financial Choice. So Everence, as I mentioned, with our fraternal status, we have these dollars that are available to help our members. One of the ways we do that is we have a paid partnership with them. We have a contract with a group that's out of Lutheran Social Services. They do business as Financial Choice. And one of the things they do, we can, there's a toll-free number you can call. You can have up to 6 free sessions per year that Everence pays for. But one of those could be a credit score report. They'll pull your credit score for you and your credit report and walk through your credit report with you to kind of check it out. So that's a service that's available that I'd be happy to give you the website for that. That was a rabbit trail. Where did we go back to? I got to rewind to go. Where did I go off of that trail to start with? We were talking about, I just handed these out, right? There we go. We're not going to go through these individually, but I want to just give you this as a tool that you can look at as you're going home with some different strategy. You can see different goals. There is, apologies that my printer, I don't know why it staples it on the wrong side. So this orange sheet is actually the front. You can see the number of pages at the bottom, 14 through 19. So you can look at the top of these. These give you some different goals that you may have that you want to work through. Do you want to build your savings? Here's some things to think about. Working at getting an emergency savings accounts set up and saved, having a strategy for short-term savings, and then give you some things to think about as far as goals there. Page 15 is if you have a goal of increasing income. Budgets are really simple in one sense, that you need to, if you have more expenses than you do than income, your budget is bad. It doesn't work. So there's 2 answers for that. If your expenses exceed your income, you can either decrease your expenses or you can increase your income. Or both. Yep. This is some ways, just some thoughts for you. Some ways if you have a goal of increasing your income, that's a help there. A goal of reducing spending, that's that other side of that equation. To say expenses our budget's not working, so we need to figure out how we're going to cut. That was on page 16, going to page 17. I confused myself with my staples. Reducing debt. If you're at a place to say we are spending a lot of money on just servicing our debt just to keep our heads above water, this is a way to kind of think through some of those things too. Again, our friends from Financial Choice Lutheran Social Services, part of what they have, if you are struggling with credit card debt and are just, you're having a hard time even keeping your head above water, it's that cycle of I made my minimum payment and they put the interest charges on top and my balance decreased by $2. It's like I'm simply giving them money for the interest they're charging me. It's hard to even keep your head above water, and that way you're only servicing that. They have some nice strategies at Lutheran Social Services. They actually have something called a debt management plan. So if you have high interest card rates, they can help you with that. They actually have negotiated rates with the credit card companies. So if you go onto this debt management plan, they have negotiated rates that'll lower your interest rates. If you're in a situation where you have creditors calling you and collection agencies calling you, part of that agreement is those calls will stop. And so it's a nice solution for folks who are really trying to dig out from some debt and helps them get a handle on that. It doesn't even have to be, we've had some people that some of our financial planners have worked with who they were managing their credit card debt just fine, but they had some high interest rate debts and credit cards, and they said, let's go on the debt management plan because that'll get our interest rates way down. So it doesn't have to be like I'm in a hole and I can't get out. It could be it's just a way for me to structure it. So that's another tool that is out there for you. And then if you have a goal to give more, here's a great way to think about these kind of things. And this isn't just with giving more financially. You could think about volunteering or helping in the community, donating your talents. And if you are, for those of you who are age 70 and a half or better, and you may be working with your retirement, once you get to age 73, here's the funny thing about your retirement savings. With your retirement savings, the government says you can put money in tax-free and we're going to get our taxes when you take it out. But they also say retirement savings are savings for retirement. They're not for the wealth. So we're going to tell to you at age 73 right now, at age 73, you have to start taking money out of this. It's called a required minimum distribution, right? And a lot of people, there are people who say, I don't like that they're making me take this required minimum distribution. I don't need it for my living expenses. So there is a way, if you're that age and you're not meeting your required minimum distributions, there's actually something called a qualified charitable distribution, where you can make your donations, your gifts to the church and charity that you're supporting directly from your retirement account, and that will satisfy your required minimum distribution. So it's a great tool. If you're already giving and you're needing to take required minimum distribution, that's the first pocket you should be thinking about giving from.
Is that charitable gift and the withdrawal from your account, is that taxable?
It's not, you don't get a tax deduction on it, but you're never paying, it's not realizing it as income, so you're never paying
You're
the
not
tax.
paying income tax on it.
That's right. Yeah.
Most importantly, it's not considered income.
Right, exactly. Comes off your top line.
Right.
You never get, and that, if you have a certain income level, this is the glimpse into what you get to think about when you get to retirement age. If you have a certain level of income, they charge you more for things like Medicare. It's called the IRMA. So if you get, this actually doesn't go against that. So we have some folks who think about giving, and so they don't realize income, and they're not pushed into that next bracket to pay more. So that's stuff that Josh will help you wrestle. So that's not for everybody, but it is something. Well, for those of you who might have parents in that space too, if they're giving to their church already, and they're taking required minimum distributions, and they're not using the QCD, qualified charitable distribution, you should talk to somebody about that. That's a great, great, great way to give effectively. And ways that we may not even think about having dollars available to give that we want to. Okay. I am going to give you some papers that you get to take home with you to look, and we're going to open up the rest of the time to say what questions you have, and Josh will come up here and help me answer some of them. So, Josh works as a CFP. The traditional financial plan for CFPs has 6 branches. As a faith-based organization, we add a 7 in giving and generosity, because we think that's a key part of what we're doing. So that's what Josh helps through. We had some questions. Somebody said something about 401k distribution. Yeah.
I was just going to say, on sheets that I saw you passed out here, you talk about what the guidelines are for qualifying for mortgages and FHA and so forth. That is the area that I spent my lifetime working in. And I will tell you this, because the bank says you qualify for a mortgage up to this amount, don't feel then you have to buy a house up to that level, which I see so often. The guidelines you have, you take notice in terms of how much your mortgage debt should be and so forth, is considerably lower. And there are an awful lot of people that are house rich and cash poor. And keep in mind, the bank's in business to make you as large a loan as they can.
Yep.
With the hope of getting repaid. That's how they survive. They're not necessarily in your best interest by saying you qualify up to this level.
Yeah.
But a lot of people look, well, banks said they can do it, so it must be right. Yeah. Well, guess what?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great thing to bring up.
Josh, I have a general question. Sure. Maybe you can If anybody here or anyone in our church says, you know what, I really would love to sit down and talk with somebody, come up with like a individual talk about retirement, about budgeting, about insurance, life insurance or something, how would they perhaps engage in that conversation, whatever is providing that service, et cetera?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I'm also gonna leave some of my cards, so initial email to any one of us, and depending on what type of conversation you're looking for, we'll get you directed to the right person. One thing, and Franco can help set up some of this stuff, but even within every congregation, Randy mentioned this word advocate, there's usually someone in a church that's connected with Everence who has our contact information. And so they're kind of the liaison that goes back and forth, but that's a good person for someone in the congregation to go to. Hey, it's a familiar face, and I'm just emailing somebody, and then they point them to us with it. That's a good question.
Yeah, so your pop quiz for any answer, if you, for what do you need to know about financial planning and budgeting, I would say the answer to that is what's the number for Everence? You can give us a call at any time. We're happy to help talk about your individual situation and get beyond the it depends kind of phases. So all of our whole staff is salaried. So that means for them that they're not incented to kind of sell you a product. Their incentive is kind of the broader relationship and making sure that you're getting what you need for your individual situation. So we do that intentionally because we don't want somebody going, I got a mortgage payment due next month, and this product gives me the best commission, and so I'm going to, guess what? If you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So we don't want that. We want to get people in what's good for them, and so we create our compensation schedule to encourage them. What was the question on distribution somebody had?
I just had the question about, now you're at that age where you're required to take distributions, or you begin to want to do that. Better to manage and take lump sums, better to take a monthly stipend, understanding that if you take too much at one time, it takes you in a higher tax bracket. Now you're going to have a higher tax bill as a result and so forth. Just what are some general thoughts and guidelines and recommendations that you has as to how you manage that process?
Sure. And so it's first thing is talking to a client, because like Randy said, I'm not gonna tell you have to do it this way. So as far as how distributions come out, part of that is, well, a lot of people are used to a paycheck they get twice a month, once a month. So having that consistent in retirement of, hey, I continue to pay my bills, so setting up systematic payouts is helpful. So whether you want to take it out at the beginning of the year and then you just take it out of your bank account as you go, that amount is not going to change your taxable income, because regardless if you take it out in one lump sum in the beginning of the year versus monthly, that'll be the same amount. But if you have a large purchase coming up, and what I try to look at client's tax situation and say, well, if you pull out 10,000 this year, 10,000 next year, now you just avoided 5,000 of your dollars going into the next tax bracket. So it's all based off of where is your income, how much of it is taxable. Now, I know Jonah's been paying attention here, because the one resource that Jonah has that all of us lack in is time. And so as you watch your balances increase over the years, the money's working harder for you, and that's why savings is important. So I'm going to throw out a new word here. Some of you might have heard it, but Jonas, it's important for you. There's Roth and there's traditional. And why is that important? If I came here and I said, well, you're all going to get a shirt, you can have any color you want, as long as you want black. Well, you're going to get a black shirt, and that's your only option. If you put everything into traditional dollars, retirement accounts,
Yep.
sorry, thank you. The only place you're going to pull money out of is traditional retirement accounts. So what is a Roth? A Roth allows you to put money in for retirement, but you're saying, I'll pay the tax today because everything's going to grow tax-free. Now this same scenario, we have a $20,000 purchase coming up. I could pull 10 from my traditional and 10 from my Roth. and my income that year only went up 10,000 because the Roth money comes out tax-free. So there's different vehicles to use for those who have the time to start saving in those versus those who are already in retirement. We just strategize with what we got. So hopefully that's helpful.
And for some of you, you're saying, well, your lips are moving, but
Yeah.
I don't understand a word you're saying. That's not, you're not alone, and that's okay. And we're here to help with that, to do some translating and kind of say, let's look at your picture and we'll help you kind of understand that in a way that is understandable for you. So we have all these words that we're just kind of used to saying every day, and we forget that, you know what? Normal people don't talk this way. So, yeah.
No, absolutely.
You did fine. I'm not saying.
No, appreciate it. I talk about this all the time, so I apologize if I did talk fast. But are there other questions?
Yeah, what are the questions, Jim?
Just one comment. What was really interesting in that Ramsey course that I took, they talked about the age factor with compounded interest and how amazingly that can work in your favor. So,
Yep.
I mean, they gave the scenario where some young guy in his late teens, like 18, 19-year-old, whatever, he put in a certain sum of money at a good, at a standard interest rate, I guess, and by the time he's in his 40s or 50s, he's got $1 million.
Yeah.
And somebody who started in their 30s invested the same amount, or maybe even more, and no million. I mean, good amount.
Yeah.
He gets more, but that age factor is immense.
Yeah, big. There's a line that says the eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest.
Yeah.
So, but here's the problem of compounding interest is, if you're on the wrong side of it, it's compounding against you, right? Because compounding interest of debt works the same way. Are you getting paid or are you paying it? So if you are in debt, the bank really appreciates your compounding interest.
Reverse mortgages work exactly that way.
Yep.
They compound the interest. So, I borrow $100,000 and we sell the home 10 years later, and you wind up paying $170,000 back. It's because of the compound interest feature of that product.
Well, if a family member is considering a reverse mortgage, just talk to us first. Walk through.
And I pay attention, like from a consumer standpoint, we didn't get into this, but there are whole fields of marketing that say you act irrationally, and I can predict that you will act irrationally in this way. And our marketers know that they can press buttons to make us act irrational. They get paid big bucks to be able to do that. So pay attention to that. And start thinking about that. So reverse mortgages, I look at that and go, there's a lot of ads on TV for reverse mortgages. They must have some plenty of money. It's the same thing with the all the gambling apps on TV, that are getting advertised now. I'm like, how do you think they're paying for these ads during the Super Bowl and stuff like that? It's because you're losing money, man. You're gonna lose money. So that's just the way. It's a math equation. Yes.
I have a question. It might be a better one because personally, but I have a small 401k from a former job, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with that. Now that I'm in a job that doesn't offer one, or I might be in a job at some point that offers a different one.
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. And what I'll say is, the sooner you ask that question in life, the easier it will be. You have options when you leave an employer. I'll be brief with this, but some employers will kick you out, and then you need to make a quick decision. If you have a new employer, you can check out their plan and consolidate. Then there's IRAs, or if I'm going to throw out that word Roth again, if you have a Roth 401k, there's Roth IRAs, but those have a little bit more flexibility in the sense you can decide where you want that. Work with advisors and such. And then legally supposed to tell you this, you have the option to cash it out. I wouldn't recommend that, especially if you're under 59.5, because you're going to have penalties, and it's all taxable income if it's traditional. And you can also convert some money to a Roth. But those are the 5 options typically that you have to do. And every scenario is different where it makes sense to move that money. That's a good question.
Other questions? Thomas? Yep.
You were talking about like the debt management programs. How does that affect credit score?
So that is, yeah, you may be thinking of debt consolidators, which are a different game altogether. You see some of those advertised where they say, we consolidate your debt, and basically what they do, what the debt consolidators strategy is they say, don't send your payment to your credit card company anymore. You're going to send it to us. We're going to store up a pool. We're going to drive your credit off a cliff until they're ready to negotiate with us, and then we can get this taken care of. But they're driving your credit off a cliff in order to do that. Debt management plan, they don't do that. They're working at saying, okay, you got this debt. We're going to work at paying this debt off systematically and helping you control that, of how you're spending that. But at the end of the day, your credit won't be affected. In fact, it'll be improved because you're getting this thing taken care of. So there are two different beasts. The debt management plan I was talking about is not a debt consolidation plan. It's not a drive your credit off the cliff.
Plus, when you settle, you have to pay taxes on the settle.
Yeah, that's another.
Whatever they arrange,
Another
you have
little.
to pay the taxes on it and things on. Oh, and that's a part.
The gift that keeps on giving.
But I'm out of debt. So I will.
That's good. Well, if there's any other questions, I'll just throw one thing out there.
Yeah, do it.
A little bit of homework. But so like emergency savings, just touch on that. Somebody might ask a question, where should I put that? Put that in a separate account in your general savings, because suddenly this emotional aspect comes in. It's like, well, this is now an emergency because it's so easy to access. So putting that in a separate account, and if you haven't heard this term, I'd say go Google it, money market. They're free accounts, but their money that's just sitting there earns higher interest. So take a look at those.
Let me close this out with a little blessing for you. I'll just say, we love getting your calls. I have sometimes people say, I'm really sorry to bother you. It's like, it's not a bother. That's why we're here. We want to talk to you. If we can help, please reach out. I'll put some of my cards out. Josh will have some of his there. Did we get you cards yet, Franco?
I didn't bring them.
So Franco's that new. I have to ask him if we got the cards. So we want to help. We want to be here to have conversations. We might not have all of the answers, but we can point you, kind of get you pointed in the right direction of where they may be. When to call. When you have life changes that are happening, that's a lot of times, that's an indicator that you should take a look at some stuff. So you're getting married, you have a significant person in your life, a parent or somebody pass, you got some inheritance. Think about those kind of things. Those are times that we can help and point you in the right direction or sit down with you. We want to help in those places. So always feel free to reach out to us. So let me leave you with these words as we get ready to leave from Philippians 4. We heard them earlier. Philippians 4:8. Finally, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for taking the morning, and we'll be around for a little bit. We'd love to talk a little bit more if you have some questions individually, but have a great rest of your Saturday.
All right. Thank you.